Hey, how you doing?
Who are you?
I'm your Uncle Buck.
Uncle Buck wasn't another John Hughes comedy. It was chaos wrapped in comfort food, but behind the slapstick, there was uncertainty from the beginning. Hughes had pursued bigger names previously to John Candy, and executives didn't think Candy could carry a movie. Nobody thought a cranky uncle would be the anchor of a family hit, but buried in the noise and the mess, it became the movie that not only inspired Home Alone, but also made John Candy one of the most popular stars of the 1980s. It wasn't just comedy. It was heart masquerading as chaos. When you look back at its bizarre origins, the movie is filled with 20 strange and interesting facts about how a messy production became a cultural touchstone. For one, it's now impossible to imagine anyone but John Candy bursting through that doorway as Uncle Buck, coat too big, face too warm, pancakes too huge. But when John Hughes originally came up with the movie, Candy wasn't even on the list. Hughes wanted star power. He pursued Jack Nicholson, thinking his wild-eyed unpredictability would electrify the role. Nicholson declined. Danny DeVito's gruff charm seemed ideal for a cranky bachelor until scheduling conflicts drove him away. Even Robin Williams's name circulated, his manic energy providing a different kind of chaos, but none of them stuck. Candy, meanwhile, wasn't the obvious choice. He was beloved, yes, but mostly in ensembles or sketch comedy. Few executives thought he could carry a movie as the lead. Hughes disagreed. He ripped back into the script, reshaping Buck's sharp edges with Candy's signature warmth and humor in mind. When cameras finally rolled, the gamble paid off. Candy transformed a foul-mouthed slob into a character audiences loved. Messy but tender, crude but lovable. Nicholson wouldn't have made him gentle. DeVito wouldn't have made him tender. Williams wouldn't have made him grounded. Not their Buck. Not anyone's Buck. Only Candy's Buck. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Spark Science, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. For Hughes, Uncle Buck was more than another comedy. It was the beginning of an empire. The movie was the first release under Hughes Entertainment, his brand-new production company financed by a multi-picture deal with Universal. It was designed to bankroll his next 10 years of films, and it succeeded, at least partially. That deal provided Hughes with the runway for early 90s films like Career Opportunities and Beethoven, but here's the catch. His biggest hit, Home Alone, didn't even go through Universal. It went to Fox. So, the film that launched his Universal era also showed how antsy Hughes actually was. He leveraged the studio backing to establish his company, but his biggest hit came when he broke free. Prior to Uncle Buck, Macaulay Culkin was just another kid auditioning in Chicago. He was 9 years old, small for his age, but when he opened his mouth, Hughes saw something different. Culkin had timing, a quick wit that allowed him to deliver sarcasm like an adult, but with the innocent face of a child. Hughes cast him as Miles, the sassy younger brother, and on set Culkin showed he could do more than just memorize lines. He traded barbs with John Candy in scenes that should have devoured him whole, firing back quips with a confidence most kids couldn't muster. Amy Madigan recalled being amazed that a child could keep pace with Candy's improvisations without breaking stride. That spark altered everything. Hughes saw Culkin wasn't just a good kid actor. He was the kid actor he'd been looking for. In that instant, Hughes started sketching an idea in his head. What if this kid wasn't just part of the mayhem, but the hub of it? For Culkin, Uncle Buck wasn't merely a first big role. It was the movie that persuaded Hughes to write Home Alone specifically for him. One sarcastic 9-year-old had stood his ground against John Candy, and then came the scene that would alter movie history, the interrogation through the mail slot. Where do you live? In the city. What do you do for a living? Lots of things. Where's your office? I don't have one. Do you have kids? No, I don't. I'll come. It's an even longer story. I'm your dad's brother, all right? You have much more hair in your nose than my dad. How nice of you to notice. I'm a kid. That's my job. That little back and forth was more than a laugh. It was the birth of Home Alone. Sometimes an entire franchise begins with one joke. In Uncle Buck, That moment with Miles and Buck's girlfriend through the front door's mail slot was a throwaway gag on the page. But when Culkin delivered it, something electric happened. His timing was razor sharp, his sarcasm effortless. And Hughes saw more than just a funny scene, he saw a lead actor. What if this kid weren't just interrogating a babysitter, but burglars? What if the whole movie belonged to him? That single spark grew into Home Alone, a $476 million global phenomenon. Though Hughes wrote the script, the funniest lines often came straight from John Candy, who couldn't resist tossing in new jokes on the fly. Take the infamous line, "Take this quarter, go downtown, and have a rat gnaw that thing off your face." That wasn't in the script. Candy threw it out mid-scene, and Hughes laughed so hard he ordered it kept in. The movie is filled with those moments. Candy refusing to color inside the lines, trusting his instincts to make Buck sharper, funnier, and more unpredictable. Amy Madigan admitted it was almost impossible to keep a straight face when Candy riffed. He would purposely lob new lines during her close-ups, trying to break her composure while the cameras rolled. The result was a film where even the actors looked like they were barely holding it together. Candy didn't just create Uncle Buck. He created an atmosphere where the cast laughed as hard as the audience. Chicago, naturally, became another character in the movie. Hughes initially placed early drafts in St. Louis, but something was missing. Chicago wasn't merely a backdrop to him. It was home, shorthand for his character's flaws and quirks. Shifting the story back provided texture. The slushy streets, the biting wind, the plain houses where extraordinary mayhem unfolded. Classrooms were shot inside New Trier High School in Illinois, an actual building Hughes enjoyed using, adding authenticity that made Buck's confrontation with the assistant principal even funnier because it felt like it was occurring in the school you attended. Then there are the pancakes. That mountain wasn't movie magic. Candy flipped them himself over a hot griddle, huge stacks cooked with flour, eggs, and smoke filling the set. The syrup was thinned out to prevent a gluey mess, but otherwise it was real breakfast cooked by a man who was his character. Another heart of the movie was Buck's tension with his niece Tia. On screen, it was sarcasm and slammed doors. But off-screen John Candy treated Jean Louisa Kelly with warmth and kindness, even surprising her with a birthday cake on set. He became family to her, not merely a co-star. One of the movie's funniest gags occurs when Buck decks a drunk clown, played by none other than Mike Starr, known for his mobster roles in Goodfellas and Dumb and Dumber. The irony made the gag hit harder. And if you travel to Illinois today, you can still see the Russell family's house at 2602 Lincoln Street in Evanston or Buck's grimy apartment across from Wrigley Field. Fans still make pilgrimages. Even the marketing changed. The theatrical poster featured the family attempting to keep Buck out, but the VHS version featured the kids, rebranding the movie as a family comedy. Critics in 1989 weren't generous, calling it crude and uneven, but audiences didn't agree. Families adored it, making it a $79 million hit on a $15 million budget. It proved Candy could star, redefining his career. But every effort to continue the story, whether the CBS sitcom in 1990, the ABC revival in 2016, or even the Indian remake Uncle Bun, failed without Candy. Because without him, there was no Uncle Buck. The Mercury Marquis car, dubbed the Beast, became nearly as iconic as Candy, its absurd backfires constructed from layered sound effects. And then there's the bittersweet truth. Uncle Buck was the last big Hughes film written specifically for Candy. Their collaboration had defined much of the 1980s, but after this, Hughes went on to Home Alone and other films. Uncle Buck is their final great collaboration. It cemented Candy not only as a comedian, but as a leading man with warmth. For many, this was the role that cemented him the moment he ceased being a sidekick and became a star. More than 3 decades later, Uncle Buck endures not only as comedy, but as a time capsule of late 1980s suburbia. The smoke-spewing car, Candy's trench coat, cassette tapes, giant pancakes, the sloppy warmth of a man who didn't play by the rules, but whose heart always shone through. It endured shaky reviews, failed spin-offs, and doubts about Candy, and instead gave us Culkin's first spark, Hughes's last great Candy role, and a time capsule of a decade when comedies were rough but full of heart. Uncle Buck could have been forgotten, just another sloppy comedy, but instead it became one of the most enduring family films of its